Just before daybreak on May 11, 1945, roughly 100 Japanese soldiers moved quietly toward an American outpost near Dingalan Bay on the island of Luzon. Their attack was aimed at one particularly important position, a light machine gun manned by 3 American soldiers. Only a few paces away, Private John McKinney was resting after a long period of duty at that gun. He had no way of knowing that within minutes the machine gun crew would be gone, the weapon would be disabled, and he would be facing the attack largely on his own. When American soldiers finally reached his position, they found 38 dead Japanese soldiers around the machine gun area. 2 more lay beside a mortar some 45 yards away. The official Medal of Honor citation credited all 40 to McKinney, and it concluded that what this quiet private from rural Georgia had done may have saved his company from annihilation. But the story did not begin with McKinney firing his rifle. It began with a sword. By May 1945, the war in Europe was effectively over. In the Pacific, it was not. American forces were still fighting across the Philippines, and on Luzon, Japanese units continued to resist even as their situation became increasingly hopeless. McKinney belonged to Company A of the 123rd Infantry Regiment, 33rd Infantry Division. His company had established an outpost near Dingalan Bay in Tayabas Province. The position was vulnerable to exactly the kind of attack the Japanese had become skilled at conducting, approaching quietly before dawn, getting as close as possible, and then striking suddenly. That morning, they succeeded. Approximately 100 Japanese soldiers moved toward the American perimeter without raising the alarm. Their attention centered on the light machine gun. If they could seize that weapon and turn it against the American position, the consequences could be disastrous. McKinney had just completed a long period of duty there and had gone only a short distance away to rest. Then an enemy soldier reached him. A saber came down and struck McKinney across the head. The blow was not fatal, but it was enough to daze him. McKinney reacted almost immediately. He grabbed his rifle and used it as a club against the man who had attacked him. Then another Japanese soldier rushed toward him. McKinney shot him. Only then did he have time to understand what was happening around him. The outpost was under attack, and the machine gun was already in danger. John Randolph McKinney was 24 years old. He came from Screven County, Georgia, a rural part of the state where hunting and farming were part of everyday life. He had little formal education, but he had spent much of his youth outdoors, and he became an experienced hunter and marksman long before he entered the army. That background did not make him invulnerable. It did give him skills that suddenly mattered enormously. He understood a rifle. He understood movement. And perhaps most importantly, he was accustomed to making decisions quickly without waiting for someone to tell him what to do. The army had brought him thousands of miles from Georgia to the Pacific. Now those skills were being tested at a range measured not in hundreds of yards, but sometimes only a few feet. At the machine gun position, the situation had already deteriorated. One of the American soldiers there had been wounded. Another withdrew while helping the wounded man to safety. That left the weapon undefended. 10 Japanese infantrymen reached it. They captured the emplacement and began trying to reverse the gun so they could fire back into the American perimeter. For Company A, this was the most dangerous moment of the attack. A machine gun facing outward helped protect the camp. The same machine gun turned inward could tear through it. McKinney moved toward the position. He was alone. There were 10 enemy soldiers inside. He went in anyway. At close range, he fired into them. 7 were killed with his rifle. Then the fight became too close for shooting. McKinney used the rifle itself. He killed 3 more with the butt of the weapon. In a matter of moments, the machine gun position had changed hands again. But there was a problem. During the struggle, the machine gun had been damaged. It no longer worked. McKinney had prevented the Japanese from using it against his company, but he could not use it against them either. He was left with his rifle, and the main attack was still developing. From the jungle came more Japanese soldiers. Grenades began landing around the American position. Knee mortars joined the attack. These were small Japanese grenade discharges that infantry units could carry and operate close to the front line. They gave attacking troops a way to drop explosive rounds behind cover and into defensive positions. Against a fixed defender, they could be devastating. McKinney therefore did not remain fixed. He changed position. He found more ammunition. He fired, reloaded, moved, and fired again. The importance of that movement is easy to overlook. A soldier who remained in one position gave the enemy time to identify where the fire was coming from. Once they knew that, they could concentrate rifles, grenades, or mortar rounds on the same point. McKinney refused to give them that opportunity for long. The Japanese encountered rifle fire from one location, then another, then another. To the men attacking through the poor light and confusion of the outpost, it was difficult to know exactly how many Americans were opposing them. In reality, McKinney was doing much of this alone. There was nothing elegant about the fighting. Some Japanese soldiers were stopped at a distance. Others came close enough that McKinney again had to use his rifle as a club. The official citation is unusually direct about what followed. He repeatedly reloaded his rifle. He cut down attacking soldiers with accurate fire. And when the fighting became too close for shooting, he fought hand to hand. Meanwhile, grenades and mortar rounds continued to fall around the perimeter. It was a brutal kind of combat, fought at distances where there was little time to plan and almost no room for error. Yet McKinney continued to hold the area around the machine gun. That mattered because the attack was not simply about one soldier surviving. Behind him was the rest of Company A. If the Japanese force broke through his section of the perimeter, it could move into the American position from the flank. The machine gun had already demonstrated how close they had come. 10 enemy soldiers had actually captured it. McKinney had taken it back before they could use it. Now he had to make certain they did not reach it again. There is a temptation when telling a story like this to turn the man at the center of it into something larger than life. McKinney himself did not need that treatment. The documented facts are remarkable enough. He was wounded at the beginning of the attack. He had watched the key defensive weapon in his section fall into enemy hands. He had attacked 10 soldiers holding that position. The weapon he recovered was then rendered useless. And after all of that, he stayed. He kept moving. He kept finding ammunition. And he continued engaging an attacking force that had begun with approximately 100 men. At some point, the balance of the battle began to change. The Japanese force had entered the perimeter expecting to overwhelm a lightly defended position. Instead, men were falling around the machine gun emplacement and along the approaches to it. Their attack was losing momentum. McKinney was still there. Eventually, other American soldiers fought their way toward his section of the outpost. What they found gave them some idea of the scale of the fighting. Around the machine gun position lay 38 dead Japanese soldiers. 45 yards away, 2 more were found beside a mortar. 40 men in total. According to the official account, McKinney had killed them single-handedly. More important than the number was what had failed to happen. The Japanese had not broken through. They had not turned the American machine gun against Company A, and they had not destroyed the outpost. McKinney was still in control of the area when help arrived. Later, the language used to describe his actions would be formal. Military citations usually are. But the conclusion was clear. His actions had saved his company from possible annihilation. For a man who had entered that morning as an ordinary private, what happened afterward involved an entirely different world. Reports moved up the chain of command. McKinney's actions were reviewed. Eventually, he was recommended for the Medal of Honor, the highest American military decoration for valor. On January 23, 1946, John R. McKinney stood at the White House. President Harry S. Truman presented him with the Medal of Honor. The citation described a soldier who had faced tremendous odds and refused to give ground. By then, McKinney had been promoted to sergeant, but the action for which he was being honored had been performed when he was still Private John R. McKinney of Company A, 123rd Infantry Regiment, a young man from rural Georgia who had been resting only a few paces from a machine gun when the attack began. McKinney returned home after the war. unlike some famous Medal of Honor recipients, he did not build a public career around what he had done. His story remained comparatively little known outside military history circles and his home state. That may be one reason it still feels surprising today. The details sound like the kind of story that would have been repeated constantly after the war. Yet McKinney himself was never a national celebrity. In 1995, Georgia designated a section of highway in his honor, the John R. McKinney Medal of Honor Highway. He died in April 1997. Years later, author Forrest Bryant Johnson reconstructed McKinney's life and wartime experiences in the book Phantom Warrior, helping bring wider attention to a soldier who had spent much of his post-war life far from the spotlight. But the most important account remains the one recorded in his Medal of Honor citation, because even when stripped of later embellishment, the essential story does not become less impressive. It becomes clearer. Before dawn on May 11, 1945, approximately 100 Japanese soldiers attacked an American perimeter near Dingalan Bay. They captured its light machine gun. John McKinney took it back. The gun became unusable, so he continued with his rifle. He changed positions while grenades and mortar rounds fell around him. He found more ammunition. He fought at a distance when he could, and hand to hand when he could not. When help reached him, 40 enemy soldiers lay dead in the area he had defended, and his company was still there. That is what makes McKinney's story worth remembering. Not because we need to turn him into a legend, and not because every second of that morning needs to be dramatized, but because the documented facts tell us something more meaningful. An ordinary private found himself in an extraordinary situation. There was no time to prepare a heroic response. There was only the next decision, then the next, and then another. McKinney kept making those decisions until the attack was over. More than 80 years later, his name is still attached to the Medal of Honor. But for many people, the man behind that name remains almost unknown. John R. McKinney was not one of the most famous American soldiers of World War II. Perhaps that is exactly why his story deserves to be told. Because history is filled with men who did extraordinary things and then returned home without asking the world to remember them. McKinney was one of those men. And on one morning in Luzon, when his company needed someone to hold the line, he did. If you believe stories like John McKinney's deserve to remain part of our history, subscribe and join us as we continue telling the stories of the men whose service is too important to disappear.